course, because we have Grums waking his way back to Midnight's Edge in the morning. Been a tick, but we have you for a limited time this morning, and we're glad to. How you been?
Waking is the operative word. I think you said waking. I'm just waking up. I'm good. I got my coffee. I'm ready to talk about the incel victory.
That's what they're calling it, according to the Fast Company.
Wow.
Is that who?
Yep.
Yeah,
Fast
who you
Company
shared here?
just
Yeah.
published an article. They're very salty. They they're blaming the chuds for Ubisoft stock.
Well, we'll get into that here.
Yeah, I have to say I liked it better when they were calling us dude bros, toxic dude bros. But hey, whatever makes them feel better for their loss and the loss of DEI. So
well, you know how it goes. They try one thing and it doesn't stick, and so they have to come up with a new term. They're very good at names. I think we have to give them credit, right? They come up with tags, and they like to stick these tags on, the quote unquote opposition.
That's all they do.
And that's all they do. And it doesn't work. And then so they have to rotate it. It's like in Star Trek where you have to modulate your shield frequencies. They have to keep coming out with new ones.
Yeah, but they do have their all-time favorites, though. And incel, this is a classic. Incels living in their mom's basement. Well, there would appear to be a whole shit ton of incels living in their mom's basement then. Basically, the entire Ubisoft audience would appear to fall into that category. So either they are wrong, or they need to be a little bit more careful with how they choose to label the entirety of the video game audience.
That's Ubisoft. We're talking about. My mom lives in my basement.
Well, there's this big middle part of the graph, right, which is the mass market and the normies and everything else, and they don't follow politics on anything else. But for a long time they were silenced, I think, through basically cancel culture and a culture of fear to never express their true opinion. But now that the pendulum has swung, they're free to vote with their wallets. They're free to say they don't like this game. And that is people are losing their minds. And when I say people, I mean journalists, right? They're shocked. Paul Tassi is always like, I can't believe Concord didn't sell. Or his latest one is like, I can't believe Ubisoft gave in to the chuds. What's going on? I mean, their whole worldview is crumbling because, across all products. And, look at Target, look at Tractor Supply, John Deere, Harley Davidson, and now Ubisoft. The people are voting with their wallets, and they're tired of this stuff. And they want value, particularly in this economy. So you got to have a good game. But even that's not enough. Concord was, by all accounts, a decent game. It was good. It wasn't a bad game, but it still tanked completely.
And rightfully so. I think that was a very, very important tanking, an important signal. Because, yeah, fine, the gameplay may have been all right. I couldn't tell because I've never tried it. And if I did try it, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the gameplay anyway, because I'm a retro gamer. I can only do 2D games. The moment I try a 3D game, I get stuck in a corner and I can't get out. So it doesn't really matter how good the gameplay is as far as I'm concerned. But those character designs, someone thought that was good, and you had something going on as groupthink behind the scenes of Concord, which we covered in, well, not our most recent, but 2 videos ago, where you basically had the head of PlayStation who really loved this game and who silenced any kind of objection. There was this atmosphere of toxic positivity, which is another way of saying groupthink, which is what happens when you have a strong group leader, which basically bans anyone from saying anything critical. That way, you don't get any real objections and real stupid decisions are made. I mean, this is how military operations fail. This is how companies spend billions on projects that people knew right away this is never going to work.
Well,
and this is how you get something like Concord. It deserved to fail.
Well, you also had a problem as well, Andre, in as much as there are 1,000 of these, looter shooter, hero-oriented games out there. And this one was requiring a premium price at $40 a pop. So, you're not going to be, Fortnite. You're not. You know, that monetization scheme was still going to be built into this looter shooter mess that they put together. And of course, as you pointed out, and as Grum's pointed out, maybe the mechanics were fine. I found them boring, but at the same time, I also found that you know, the biggest turnoff was all the, you know, political garbage that they kind of tried to shove in there. And we're seeing this more and more frequently when it comes to games. I get more and more, you know, salty about it. And what's interesting is even games that may not have political bent in it. And I don't know if you got to see State of Play, Grums, but when the Ghost of Yutai bit came out, it immediately kind of soured a lot of gamers because they were worried about, you know, what would show up in that game, because immediately you have a out of bounds, you know, character in a period of time that may be out of place. And then we later discover that an activist, a radical activist, is going to be voicing said character. Did you get a chance to see that? I imagine you did.
Oh yeah, I did. But you know, I think we have to be careful. I mean, we're so jaded right now. We know that when this happens, the expected result is the game is going to be just preachy, if not outright bad. It's going to be preachy and hate you, and you know, but I think we have to be careful. But it's not looking good. I mean, it's just the more you dig into it, it may not even be the same principal team. There's a lot of, you know, new devs on that project hired in the last year or two that are activists. So, you know, I think we're just cautious because we love the first game and we're worried about the second.
Yeah, and it's you know, I found myself, you know, as we were watching it live on the gaming channel, as we were watching it live, I found myself trying not to overreact to what I'm seeing. You know, I know what I'm seeing when I see, you know, the remake of you know, Horizon, you know, West or whatever it's going to be, and I know that that's going to be full of nonsense, especially from a visual standpoint. But when you look at games like that are being right on the release horizon, you start to feel like this is going to be bad, and you have to kind of fight against that. You have to fight against seeing ghosts, is what I call it. But I unfortunately, I'm having a really difficult time as we learn more and more about what went into the Ghosts of Yutai. So but again, you know, we're at now in that point where, you know, Fast Company can't take the L, you know, and realize that it's everybody, as Andre pointed out, right? It's like, I'm not going to buy this. And now I think we've convinced most people, thanks to you, my friend, not to pre-order stuff. Just stay miles away from it.
Oh, that was a thing for a long time. That's not me. I mean, you know, don't pre-order is a good mantra to follow, especially now. But I think it's particularly effective this year. Like, people are really voting hard with their wallets, and that's been my campaign is 2 years to stop the spread, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Don't buy AAA games that either have, you know, crappy gameplay, excessive bugs, or push this DEI narrative stuff, right? The umbrella covers all of that, and I think it's working. And there's so many great indie games to play out there. Coming out, including ones that have been, you know, canceled, quote unquote, and it only drove sales, you know, when people tried to do that to them. So there's plenty to play, and we have huge Steam backlogs too.
Did you see the Midnight Walk game? Isn't that fascinating?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah. It's like a Tim Burton claymation thing. Visually, it looked incredible, and it seems like it, you know, it might have nonsense in it, but the early, you know, preview that they served up at State of Play was incredible. I was like, wow, it's like playing. It could be like playing a Tim Burton game. Very odd.
Yeah, there's another game that I'm looking at grabbing this weekend called Tiny Glade, which is this really kind of like non-combat castle building game, and you can build these castles with really intuitive tools, and they're beautiful, and you can walk around them and explore them. And the team's in Sweden. That's a very woke place, and I have no problem. Keep your politics out of the game. and out of preaching to kids, and I'm okay with it if you make a good game. It's because it's become a tool for activism that games as a media has turned into a cudgel to beat people into compliance. And developers, all of my friends who can't say anything at work, that's where I have a problem.
Yeah, it's fascinating that now we have. People are actually concerned about GTA 6, which is crazy.
Yeah,
and that's going to be the biggest game next year. I mean, I don't think there'd be anything even close.
Everyone's going to buy it. No matter what they do, it's going to sell like gangbusters. But it could, if they change the formula, And look, there was a parody game, right, called Saints Row, right? Yep. And they were so brazen in Saints Row. They were so over the top, and they dialed all that back for the narrative in the sequel, and it killed them.
Yeah, it destroyed them, and it was preachy. It had the wonderful SJW haircut featured prevalently. And
well, speaking of DEI, we have a DEI specialist with us.
Oh boy,
Mr. Paul Chato.
Yes,
Hey, Paul.
I'm diversity all rolled into one.
Okay. Do you have your card?
I identify as an amoeba.
You have all the diversity stones in your gauntlet?
I do.
Oh boy.
Hey, look, I have broken glasses that I fixed.
I just got brand new glasses.
Oh, welcome to the Nerd Club.
So
oh my God.
So my son, I did these in 3D, and then my son printed it up on his Creality, and then I just glued it all.
They broke again? Because this is like the second time.
Yeah. I had didn't really glue it together properly, and it fell apart, and so redid it. If
good morning, we're in the middle of.
If at first you don't succeed, quit. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Good morning, though. We're in the middle of talking about.
Yeah, I hear. So I didn't interrupt. This sound great. Hi, Grumps. Nice to see you. And Culture. I haven't seen you here in a while.
Hey,
and Scribe.
Hello.
Pikachu. All nicely groomed.
Pikachu.
As opposed to other times where we're not nicely groomed.
I got a business question about Ubisoft. You guys follow the business aspects of things a little more than I do. So, we shouldn't be taking our victory lap, I think, because if you usurp the king, you don't know who's going to take their place. And so what's happening is Ubisoft stock has tanked so low that investors are calling for replacement of management, taking the company private, even selling to private equity. Now, if buyers have created the situation, and Ubisoft itself, through its ineptitude, has created the situation, it means that vultures are circling. There's always a power play for these companies. There's always powerful moneyed entities that are competing to buy up assets at fire sale prices. So we don't know what's going to happen. BlackRock could come in there and pick up the whole company. And in fact, they've made an offer, I guess, a tender offer to the board. I don't know if it's to that level of officialness yet, but they did contact the board saying, hey, we might be interested in buying you guys.
But we might not play any of the games that are left in the shelf. So who cares?
Yeah. And so I think, we have to be careful, because the people who are making the power play with the money aren't necessarily on your side either. So it's just a note of caution, I would say.
Yeah, it's strange because that falls under the French minority rule, which requires 30% of shareholders to basically kind of move that needle that you're talking about there. And the Guimont brothers have really foiled the progression of that company, because they got caught up in the kerfuffle of the Me Too version for gaming, and so they went hardcore the other way to try to prove that they were allies to the woke sauce, and that's kind of the thing that destroyed them. But the entities that are going after them that have a pretty decent chunk of them would be Tencent. Actually, it would be more my concern, despite the fact that if Black Myth Wukong is anything to gauge off of, at least the games won't be preachy off the extreme.
From everything I have heard, and of course this is something that can change in a moment, and Grumps will correct me if I'm wrong, but from everything I have heard so far, Tencent actually lets the companies run pretty much as they want, And they are, as a company, not down with the DEI agenda at all. They are very, very unwoke. So if a company wants to do something unwoke, they'll let them. That, at least from what I understand from people that actually are working under Tencent, have told me, is how they are operating right now. Now, that can change. But again, Tencent doesn't want necessarily to use their own stuff to corrupt the American minds. They would rather have their stuff take over completely, is my understanding.
I've watched it for a long time. I know Tencent, and Tencent has done something that most Western companies, particularly game companies, can't do, which is they purchase assets and they grow them. Right. Every time EA buys a studio, it kills that studio. Right. There's the meme of EA walking down the line of doors in studio after studio that they purchase closing. It's because for some reason, Western companies and studios, and this goes from Universal to everybody else, they love to meddle when they buy an asset. They love to insert their officers into right there. This happened at Blizzard too, and we pushed back. We said no. They want their own HR, their own IT, their own marketing lead, and whatever inserted into the company, and they want to fully integrate it, and they kill the culture of that studio. Tencent doesn't do that. Tencent, on the other hand, may not be woke itself, but they don't have a problem if the studio wants to be woke, like Riot Games, right? They will just let them run with whatever they're running with until it's not making money, and then they got to answer to it.
Yeah. No, because when you're acquiring a company, you're buying their success, conceivably, and that is the people that were there when it was successful. And so I had this happen with the company I was with. Somebody wanted to come in and acquire us, and they're talking about, we're going to lay off all these people and everything else. I'm like, okay, well, you might buy the technology, but you're not buying the people who actually make the company valuable if you're doing that.
Yeah.
And
Paul,
so, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, Scrub. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were done. I was just going to say, Paul talks about this all the time, is the change in corporate culture, because it's happened in entertainment over and over again. You know, Disney is the worst, offender of all when it comes to destroying what was there before.
Yeah, you think you know better just because you've got the money to buy it up. It's like, we're smart enough to have the money to acquire you. Therefore, we're smarter than you, the asset that we're purportedly buying because you were successful without us to begin with.
My experience is that it's often not done intentionally. The corporate culture of the buyer just automatically through HR infuses itself into the new into the parasite that you have, or whatever, whatever the host parasite paradigm is. I can't figure it out right now. It's just natural. It's why companies, there's only a few companies out there when they purchase other companies actually do it successfully. Cisco has a good reputation for buying other technology companies, but the track record generally is 80% failure on purchased companies.
I think you can track the turning point of Blizzard exactly with the buyout by Activision.
Of course.
Sure. Yes.
But before that, we were bought out by Vivendi, and we were bought out by Vivendi, and also Davidson and Associates, right? Each time Blizzard execs, we all formed a wall. We said, this line, thou shalt not pass, right? Very Gandalf. And we fought for that. And the only reason it worked was because Blizzard brought in the lion's share of revenue. As soon as Activision merged with Blizzard and took control, Blizzard found themselves in a precarious place where the execs could no longer put up that resistance, because mobile gaming, Candy Crush, Activision side was making so much money, and they were no longer the dominant financial force within the organization. As soon as that happens, you start to chip away, and they get more and more people into Blizzard, and this is when it all went to shit.
Didn't it also get Me Too'd at exactly that same time?
It was after the acquisition, some years after, but yeah, they did get Me Too'd. So did Riot, so did a bunch of other places.
Yeah, and again, that was not unplanned. I will say it that way, but I'll also say I think that the worst example right now, and again, we've lost 13 studios so far this year that are no longer with us for games. But maybe more, actually. I haven't updated my figures, but I think Embracer was one of the worst offenders in destroying cultures and studios simultaneously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Embracer, I mean, that was a stupid play. I mean, they raised a lot of money, they leveraged themselves to the hilt, and they bought out these studios for ridiculous sums of money during the COVID boom, thinking that that would last forever. And then they were forced to sell off all the assets, basically. It was a stupid play, business-wise.
Well, they're the ones you mentioned the game, Saints Row. They killed that studio. Volition's gone. No more. See ya. Bye.
Yeah, and the dirty thing that Embracer did is they took all that debt and they saddled it by spinning out these other companies and assigning the debt to them. So they were basically, the Embracer Group execs were lining their pockets while the times were good, and then they leveraged all this debt and they spun it off on these studios when they weren't profitable. It's a dirty, dirty move, and I hate business tactics like that.
Yeah. But I don't see any of that happening in Tencent, though. So fingers crossed that it won't either, because so far they've done a better job than certainly Embracer has. I would say, because again, they just let the studios do what they keep on doing. If they were woke, they'll be allowed to continue to be woke as long as they make money. Well, and if they're based, they'll be allowed to be based as well.
Yeah, I don't think the activists actually realize that if the Chinese actually take over gaming, they're not going to get their way anymore as far as pushing all the femininity-based stuff rather than the masculinity-based stuff.
Not unless the Chinese want it. Maybe they want it for Western markets.
No, they want money more. Right now, their economy's in
Right
shambles.
now, they do. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of the reason why you see so many things coming out from under 10-cent owned companies, which are allowed to be based in a way that just isn't possible under Western owned companies.
China is very fluid. If it serves their political aims to undermine Western culture by promoting a cancerous brain rot ideology, I mean, they did that. I mean, they did that in 2020, 2021.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they don't do that at home. They don't do that. You know, and I can tell you that the CCP is very involved with media as a tool, right? But I mean, things change, and the pace in China business is so fast, it can change daily. I mean, they can pivot on a dime. They are so much faster than Western companies that if they need the money, they will throw that away in a heartbeat just to raise their war chest again. So yeah, I mean, if you look at who's really making the games this year that are succeeding, it's China with Wukong, and which has sold 20 million copies, more than any other Assassin's Creed game, bigger than Ubisoft, right? And for a new studio. And if you have to look at Korea with companies like Shift Up, and they're going public with a huge valuation on the strength of Stellar Blade, they're giving gamers what they want, and they're making a lot of money. And Western studios are complaining, and they're blaming a soft game demand, a soft market, and the economy for their failures, when that's obviously false when you look at the countries that are succeeding. Now, the country that is in danger is Japan. Japan has this year really pushed on DEI, and Square Enix creating an ethics department and everything else. They're late to the party. They missed that wave of funding, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and this is really going to hurt Japan. So I have a warning for Japanese companies, like, look at what happened. Don't do this. You've got great IPs. Please don't do this. Capcom, don't do this.
Well, I got to ask you, Mark, did you see recently that Square Enix is disavowing that? And do you think that that's genuine, or do you think
no, really? Okay. What did they say?
Yeah, I read that.
They are no longer pushing any of that, and that they pushed out there into the media that they are no longer doing business with Sweet Baby Inc. So no more Kim Belair.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, if you look at their recent media for Sweet Baby Inc., their name is no longer on that page with all their quote unquote partners. So, and now you're starting to hear pushback like, well, we don't have an agenda. Ubisoft just recently said that. Baloney sausage. You just came out with your new mentorship program that pushes all of this garbage. So you're lying. That's not going to help investors make a decision to keep you, you guimants around. for much
The-
longer.
The writing's on the wall, and as you guys said, the signals are unassailable. Concord's huge failure. The success of games like Wukong, even what is it? First Ascendant, right? And
Yeah.
Stellar Blade. I mean, they're looking at that, and China, like I said, they pivot fast, and they have no problem hopping on a trend for money. Single player console games that are not woke, like Wukong, 20 million copies. Okay, that you're going to see a flood. Instead of China making MMO and gacha clones, they're going to jump right into console and make awesome single player games that are just stunningly beautiful, because they always have great art, even if the gameplay.
If only the Chinese were good at programming.
Well, I would say that they have fewer bugs than Star Wars Outlaws. That's a start.
Jeez.
But that's Ubisoft. That's what we expect. Ubisoft.
I wrote a
gives us that.
sitcom of a marketing company where one of the partners was Chinese, a guy named Zhang, and every time they went to a business meeting, the people that the companies they went to pitch always thought that he was the chief programmer of the company. And he was the art director, and he'd flip out like every single time. I'm not a programmer. It was a very funny character.
Yeah, but I mean, seriously, it's expected from Bethesda. Bethesda gives us broken games.
Only Todd is left. Todd is the only person left from the heyday.
Yeah, but he gives us broken games still.
Bethesda always did. I mean, how many times did we play with flying elephants in Skyrim?
Oh,
yeah, but the formula doesn't work anymore. I mean, they relied on
No.
the formula for Starfield, and the bugs and the lack of innovation just killed them there.
Well, it was also a crappy game.
Well, but we stopped supporting it, right? I mean, think about it. We used to build mods so that we could make the game playable. We would beat them to the solution oftentimes,
right?
And we would make the game better. I mean, I just watched a gameplay video of somebody that applied all the amazing mods to Skyrim, and I was like, wow, that's an entirely different game that is gorgeous. Like Black Myth Wukong.
And they tried to kill the mod business and create their own little store for mods, which I don't think really worked.
Yeah, but that requires a game that's actually fun and good to begin with. The people are inspired to want to add on to and fix. When like Starfield doesn't inspire that. Skyrim will, because at the foundation, it's actually a really fun game. I think Total Biscuit called it something to the effect of like broad as a lake, but as shallow as a puddle. But still, everybody had fun with it.
I'm still playing it. I'm on another playthrough right now with the VR headset. I'm playing it on VR now. It's gorgeous. I'm like,
back when things were good.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, but again, I mean, Bethesda also delivered a broken Fallout 76. That was the point at which, and Grumsh will be proud of me, that's when I stopped pre-ordering games. I was done. I was so angry.
That was the first game I ever pre-ordered. That's the first game I mean, in my entire life, I was like, wow, Fallout 76. I'm really excited about this. And that was the first game I ever pre-ordered AAA, and I was like, never again. Never again.
The worst AAA pre-order for me was Destiny. That was like, holy crap, really? Dude, and now you're going to make me pay for the upgrade that includes a story that should have been included in this $130 Canadian package, which included a poster, by the way.
Ooh.
Yeah, things are so different. I mean, things are so corporate, but we are, Helldivers is a very interesting case study in that they seem to be listening to their players.
Yeah, I mean they've gone pro buff, and now they're focusing on content. And I said in the beginning, I said, listen, I think this will work if they focus on fixing the nerf issue and changing their philosophy 180 on that, and they're consistent in that, and they don't go back and nerf again. And then they start coming out with content. This could be a No Man's Sky. I could see Helldivers having a very long path here with a very rich game with this meta war they have happening in the galaxy. I think that has a ton of potential, and they seem to be turning it around. So good on them.
Well, I think Space Marine kind of pushed them too.
Oh yeah.
Well, but but here's the problem. Gamers do not want to sign up for PlayStation Network to play something that they're playing through Steam. In fact, I don't believe anybody wants to sign up for any of that garbage. And I think people are sick and tired of live service games. I mean, you immediately have a level of corruption when you're tied into something like that, and I think gamers are done with it. I mean, they've voted with their wallets oftentimes.
I don't know if you guys have covered this, and Grum, maybe you have a better take on it. But when the Sweet Baby Inc. business around Ragnarok, the Norse Greek thing, what's his name?
God of War.
God of War. Thank you.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've played that game a lot. Ragnarok wasn't so bad. Yeah. You went, okay. When it was on the PlayStation, okay, they've flipped around some characters, and this is now a girl, and oh, she's black, and oh, look at that. What are they doing with the sun? The sun isn't saying the same stuff that he did in the previous game. But I'm just wondering whether there's an overreaction to Sweet Baby Inc.'s touching of that game now that they've become notorious, now that it's been released onto Steam. The game hasn't changed. It's still a pretty good game.
I don't know. I kind of disagree there, because I think anything Ubisoft, Sweet Baby Inc. is about should not be condoned, right? Like, they don't need
that's the premise, but I also am afraid of any kind of blanket statement. Also, it's just me. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying, Paul, and I totally would agree with you under normal circumstances, but it's not like Sweet Baby Inc. exists for any other reason than to DEI.
Sure.
That's all it exists for.
Sure, but
Exactly.
did Ragnarok suddenly become a worse game because we found out Sweet Baby Inc. was involved?
No, it had already been indicated that there was something off about it. I mean, I mean,
it was still sold really well.
I was immediately turned off on that game. Well, again, you figure out over time, and then they become more blatant and aggressive about their pursuit of garbage,
Right?
And shoveling garbage that
Well, that's how we get here, right? Sorry.
Yeah. No, but Tom, I mean, even you, I know, have noticed that now people are pointing out all the other consultancy groups that are trying to shovel this doo-doo.
Good. That's good.
And
frankly, God of War was much better than Ragnarok.
Oh yeah.
A little overreaction is not a bad thing when you need a market correction. So I think that SBI has levels of involvement. Sometimes they just read a script and give some comments. Sometimes they're the lead writer. But in whatever case, associating that brand and that ideology with toxic results on your profitability, even if it may be overblown in some cases, is actually part of a correction, right? And you have to let that happen. Otherwise, you don't get the correction. If you go soft now, then you don't attain victory. So that's saying the quiet part aloud a little bit. But yeah, I think some people do overreact, and actually, I'm okay with it because it's like a massive sell-off on stock. That's just part of it, and and it's necessary. This is change, right? Change is violent. Change happens, financially violent, and this is something that needs to happen if we're going to see the industry change.
And even if Sweet Baby Inc.'s touch on a particular game is light in one instance, it shows a willingness of that company to indulge in that kind of thinking in producing their product. And so if they can get away with it once, we'll do it again, maybe push it a little bit more. And DEI, the whole ESG thing, it's poison. It's poison from the root to the tree. And so just, if you see it, just say no.
It's toxic. And I don't want any political activism to create a culture of fear in gaming studios or amongst gamers. I don't want to see it on the left, and I don't want to see it on the right. I don't want I don't want like activist Republican organizations pushing into media either. I think that's ridiculous. We just want, my philosophy is games should be a watering hole. We should come together.
I mean, there is a learning process. When we were doing our game, and we would go to the GDC back in like the 1992 through to 1996, there was a certain level of sexism that you could tell. But on the other hand, I ran into a programmer who happened to be lesbian, who had this fantastic game demo. And there wasn't a single guy who didn't surround her and go, holy fuck, this is great. You know what I mean? So there was this duality that was going on, partially because it was so male dominated at the time. But if you had something good, No one put it down because of who you were, what who you liked, in bed. That didn't exist. It always came down to the game. Now it seems to be only like the GDC. I would never go to it now. It seems like a hellhole.
Well, yeah.
That's why we need to go MEI, merit, excellence, and I forget what the I stands for.
Innovation, intelligence.
Yeah.
We need to get back to that.
I like
That makes
missing in
good
action.
product.
As I prefer that.
And you need to have open conversations.
Oh, you're not
for
allowed
that
that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not allowed to have
Well,
open conversations. Look at all the Disney. You make a complaint that you say this person of a certain background is a lousy actor. Then it immediately shifts over to the race argument.
Right. But there's no nuance in a cult. There just isn't.
No,
So
and either side.
Yeah.
It's true. Yes.
Yeah. So, and look, I'm with Grums. I think the pushback is necessary if we want to get back to getting good games that are, not, shoveling manure at everybody, whether it be left or right. I mean, sure, you feel satisfied that this game may represent this tiny little sliver of a faction of, 4% of the gamers out there. But at the same time, you've alienated this, 96 other percent. Is my math right?
My view is, and I think everyone shares this, anyone should be able to make a product.
Yeah.
I don't care where
Sure.
you come from, but look at what that, the press tour, not press tour, but the video from the developer of the new Dragon's Age was just appalling. And that's
gosh.
a game I liked. Right.
Not
So
this one.
why are these people being given the reins to wreck existing good IP? Like I never liked Saints Row. It was a bit nasty
Why?
for me.
Saints Row 2 was great. Saints Row 2
Yeah.
was excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one was a bit. It wasn't my jam.
Yeah, the first one is
But Dragon's Age looks like crap. And
That was terrible. Visually, Paul, did you see the way they had to fade out in the game demo? They had to
for
fade
sure.
out of a boss fight. I was like,
it looked
what
like
is-
it looked
what
like
is
The
that?
Sims. And my son, who was heavily involved in the GTA community,
Mhm.
and was even doing beta testing on 5, has heard back from Confederates saying 6 is absolute trash.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Yep. I've been
What?
restrained. Yeah, I've been restrained in pursuing that story on that game place. I have been, on the other channel. I've been avoiding that conversation because I want confirmation that the ending that we've been told is actually what it is. So I won't even spread it here until I can confirm it. But the game itself is outside of the obvious things that we are shown, the lovely screen elements that put the narrative together for us. I'm very concerned. And again,
Well,
I mean,
it's going to sell very well, but
Yeah.
like you said with Starfield, you guys said it depended on the community of modders to make it. I mean, that's what made GTA, right?
Yeah.
The modders and everybody else sustaining that. If they create a game where the modders aren't interested in supporting it, that's trouble down the line.
Yeah. That's the death knell for a community like that that's built on customization and having the freedom to kind of make the game you want to play with the good infrastructure.
Well, Scribe, do you think that maybe they're taking a risk in destroying the online presence they have with 5, with GTA Online? Do you think that that's going to hurt them?
Of course. I mean, how has that game sustained itself all these years without the online community?
Yeah.
I mean, if you just had a single player game, like say a Skyrim or something, that was solid and everybody loved it and everything else, everybody loved seeing each other's gameplay or mods and everything, sure. But GTA is it is a community. It is a lifestyle. I know people that, like, as I'm sure some of you do too, that talk about experiences that they had in that game with other friends as though they were real life adventures. And it has lasted how many years now? How many other online multiplayer games have made as much money, lasted as long, and is still talked about today, and gameplay footage still gets millions of views on YouTube? You can't really name many. And so if they destroy that, that's like the backbone of what would lead people into wanting to play a sequel, is there's got to be a rich online community to begin with that's not only brought over, but also celebrated for keeping the franchise alive this entire time.
Well, it's like they got kind of too greedy too fast with a lot of this stuff. And this kind of comes from more of an outside observer, not somebody who's much of a gamer. Cause I'm one of those people that's like, as soon as I could afford one of these game systems, I worked too much to actually play it. But yeah, see, Paul knows what I'm talking about. But like, I feel like they went from, the microtransactions to the idea of us always having to be online to us constantly not just having to be online, but signed up for a service through either Xbox or PlayStation or whoever it is. It's this constant thing. And for me, I'm just sitting here watching a lot of my friends who are into gaming and my kid who especially is into gaming. And to me, it's a money pit as far as I'm concerned, the amount of money that he sticks into this gaming. It's like, I mean, I have expensive hobbies too, but Jesus balls.
Well,
for basically nothing you're getting for a lot of the times. I mean, a skin, a this, a that, or whatever. Sorry, but yeah.
Well, I was just going to say is that I, in a way, I can't blame the companies for constantly pushing the next red line to see how far people will go to keep paying for things. Because if they're going to keep paying for things, that just redoubles their efforts to keep doing it.
Well, right. Once you broke that seal, there's no going back. Right.
Right. Yeah. But now, as you guys have been talking about, the backlash is coming. People are saying, "Well, wait a second. I'm actually not getting any value for my money. You keep pushing out stuff that I actually don't like over and over again." And it kind of reminded me. Culture said earlier about how when the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima came out, or the trailer, you're kind of apprehensive because, like, girl boss territory. And that's not our fault. That's the industry's fault for producing content after content, movie after movie, game after game, where it's like, primary female character, and it's garbage. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game. Most people are at least standoffish enough to say, well, Stellar Blade was kind of cool. All these other games where you have a female protagonist. We got to wait a second because it's just a little bit, but that's been conditioned into us.
I usually give the gaming community credit for being a bit ahead of the curve, or being able to be more organized than any other fan community, or whatever you want to call it. But I almost feel like, and I hate using the term lemmings because we found out that wasn't even true, that Disney documentary that everybody bases that on, they actually pushed those little fuckers off the cliff. But like, it just to use that as an analogy, it almost feels like sometimes gamers are like that when it comes to some of this gaming stuff. It's like, you guys walked right into the pit of despair that the same people that everybody else did when it came to streaming without even realizing it. Or at least you guys should have realized it ahead of time, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. Because if you look at the way cable kind of reversed itself around to streaming, it's like people thought streaming was such a great deal, and now all of a sudden they're starting to realize, wait a minute, I'm paying out twice as much as I was for cable for half the entertainment, plus I got to pay for internet on top of it all just to watch said entertainment.
What's wrong with that?
Exactly my point, Paul. And that's gamers. It's almost like they asked for that on purpose. I mean, I know they didn't deliberately, but it was like you guys invited the devil into the house, or a vampire into the house, without even thinking twice. To where, normal people with the cable streaming deal, I can see where that they kind of broke the general public into that kind of slowly in comparison.
Although the gamers, because a lot of this is real time, did make pushback, and famously did on Star Wars, where the loot boxes. Right.
I remember a few incidences.
So there's pushback and in gaming, and because it's online, it has an immediate effect compared to a TV show or movie that's already in the can and has to be, presented like you're done, like it's baked, right? But to me, the fascinating thing is there's the greed of the corporate entities, but this parasitic universe, just getting back to Sweet Baby Inc., which is a whole industry that has infested regular businesses, schools, governments, gaming, that make money, but do not have anything to do with the core product.
Right. Sorry.
This is, to me, is the most fascinating thing. And to me, it's always follow the money, whether it's a Middle Eastern thing, whether it's NGOs, like, where's the money coming from? Who has the opportunity to make money? And DEI is a perfect example where it has nothing to do with the, John Deere making tractors, right?
Well, this
in games, the DEI people, or the Sweet Baby Inc. have, apply a narrative thing, but it's really got nothing to do with the core business of making popular games. So there's this whole parasitic industry that I find fascinating.
Well, the thing that I found in looking at DEI for years now is they always talk about how, well, I don't know about that, but I mean, DEI, they always talk about has to be a part of everything that we do. And yet, if you listen to DEI officials, and I did a stream on this where they did several interviews with DEI officials in different companies, and one of the things that they tried to describe what's your job like, and the one word that came up over and over again was loneliness, because DEI is required to be in these companies. But if you think about it for a second, if you're a chief officer of DEI, what does that say about your skill set? Because someone who's the lead in sales has presumably a profession, an output, some kind of skill. DEI has to be everywhere, but it has nothing to do with anything. It's just there. It's a tack on because companies need that box checked that they have an active DEI program in order to qualify for the funding from a lot of these, venture capitalists or banking firms. Goldman Sachs won't even do business with you unless you have a certain cachet with DEI.
Yeah, to clarify, it's not just that they get cash in; it's they lose their credit lines if they don't.
Well, yeah,
have
exactly. Yeah,
and to come back around to it, Paul,
their HRC rating. I mean, what can a DEI exec do? Look, do you see that Polynesian secretary? I did that.
Do you did it or you did her? No,
maybe both.
Maybe both.
Maybe both. I'm not.
You exactly just explained why, Paul. Sorry, Culture, just real quick.
Yeah.
You explained exactly why, Paul. I said earlier, you can't give Sweet Baby Inc. any leeway whatsoever, because that's exactly, they are as we've used the analogy before, but they're the guys outside who broke your window, but yet they're sitting there trying to sell you a new one.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But look, if you look at it as a business person, I mean, if you step back and you approach this, let's say as a CEO or whatever, DEI is not a profit center. If anything, as we continue to learn, we continue to learn how fraudulent McKinsey's study was, and the fact that now major financial analysts and major financial trades are coming out and calling this out for what it is. How can corporations still buy into it? Because
McKinsey's a fraud anyway. I worked for them.
Well, it's because this whole thing was sold to these corporations under false pretenses, right? You got to look at it this way. Like they're selling the DEI people are selling it to these companies. Like, look, you want more people to buy your stuff, right? Yeah, of course we do. Well, if you put this, and this in there, more people will buy it. Ignoring the fact that changing said thing is going to erode your entire fan base. Like the one we always use is like, it would be like if tomorrow, Burger King decided, you know what, we're going to make the Whopper vegetarian because, it's better for everybody that way.
Well, yeah.
And we're going to cater to this small portion of the audience, and then everybody else will be happy too. It's just false thinking. It doesn't work that way.
There's that, and there's also the constant refrain of we are trying to recorrect for the misdeeds of the past. Also the fear of being called racist or sexist or something for bad PR.
Yeah, indeed. Culture, you were saying.
No, all I wanted to say is not only is that one of the problems, that there's no financial benefit to doing it. The one place that you can lose grasp very quickly or lose influence is in games, because gamers have reacted faster than any other entertainment entity to being delivered poor product. Mm-hmm. These are Grums. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean GTA is looking to be like a $600 million game.
Yeah. Games are basically online communities. That's something that movies don't have, right? I mean, the entire ecosystem for a game of support and marketing and everything else is the online community. I think that's why they can move so fast. And games are becoming obscenely expensive to make. And I'm really thinking that part of that's legitimate because of the demands of content. And part of it is bloat. I think you could make AAA games for half the team sizes. I don't think they need to be that large. And I think that the right thing to do with Ubisoft, which has 20,000, 16. They're down to 16. They did layoffs. 16,000 employees and a very poor valuation to employee ratio. That they need.
Well, they're French.
They need to pull a Twitter. They need to get rid of 80% of their staff.
I was just going to say of that staff, who's actually doing all the work, right? Like that's the real question. It's maybe
Nintendo
5, 10,
has
15%, right?
1/8 of their staff, and their valuation is many orders of magnitude bigger than Ubisoft. So I think that shareholders need to look at that and say, why is that? And if Nintendo can produce this value, and if Valve is another one that produces tremendous value with a very tiny headcount, why does Ubisoft need 16,000 employees? there is bloat there.
And I don't know whether the industry has changed, Grums, or not, but again, back in the 90s, all the programmers working on all the games back then weren't all great. And what was interesting with Crystal Dynamics and other companies that, you know, I had contact with, there was always one or two people, usually guys, that were the superstar programmers that were paid bags of cash to go in and fix things because they were big brains.
That's true of anything. That's the Pareto principle.
Yeah,
right?
And they were, oh my God, you know, once they finished a project with one company, they were not hireable. They would never be an employee. They just immediately consulted on something else and fixed their game, which was proof that the programming base of each of those companies were inadequate because they needed this superstar to come in to actually big brain a game into reality.
Well, you get a lot of disadvantages. I mean, this was well documented way back in the 60s with IBM and the Mythical Man Month, right? As soon as team sizes get past a certain size,
right,
you have huge communication issues, especially since games are not made by one studio. They're made by 6 or 7 studios banded together across the globe for these AAA games. You lose vision, you lose cohesion, your communication time goes up, and you slow down. You only need a couple of ninjas. Old school Blizzard, we said, we just need ninjas. And all of BattleNet, for the longest time, was run by like 4 people. It started with 1. Right. And it was run by 4 people. The Valve storefront was run by 1 guy, you know, for the longest time. You do not need an army unless your aim is to bloat your departments and create little power fiefdoms within the company, which does happen. It did happen eventually at Blizzard. You can go in and cut 80% of Ubisoft and deliver tons more value. And that's what shareholders should be asking.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.